Imagine this. You're digging through official government records and you find an entire group of people that just existed one minute and were gone the next. So what we're going to do in this explainer is break down a really fascinating and, yeah, pretty controversial theory. It's all based on one source's take on a mystery they claim is hidden right in the margins of the 1890 census.
The source we're digging into today makes this just staggering claim that a whopping 2 million people were systematically erased from history. We're not talking about a war or a famine, but just gone, wiped away with the stroke of a pen.
And when we say erased, the source is really specific about what that means. These people didn't just pass away or pack up and move to another country. The claim is they were literally removed from the official records, their entire existence scrubbed from the history books.
And this quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. It's not about a natural event. It suggests a deliberate act, a conscious decision to make millions of people just vanish from the pages of history. So the big question is, how could that even happen?
So, where does a story like this even begin? Well, according to our source, it starts exactly where you'd expect a great mystery to begin, in the quiet, dusty aisles of the National Archives. A researcher who is actually looking for something totally different just happens to stumble across something that changes everything. And this is it. This is the first clue. That remarks column in a census, it's almost always empty. But here, the source points out these handwritten notes, impossible measurements like height 7'8", showing up page after page, all written in the same ink as the rest of the census entry. And this slide, this really puts that first discovery into perspective. This wasn't just a couple of odd notes. In just one district in one city, the source claims there were over 400 people recorded at these incredible heights. That's a full 5% of the entire local population.
Okay, so just how wild are those numbers? Let's put it this way. Today, the medical rate for gigantism is something like 3 or 4 people per million. The rate found in that Pittsburgh census was closer to 50,000 people per million. We're not even in the same ballpark here. It's like a different planet.
So you're probably thinking, okay, Pittsburgh, maybe that was just some weird one-off, right? A huge clerical error? Well, according to the source, the answer is a big fat no. That one discovery in Pittsburgh was just the tip of the iceberg. As researchers kept digging, the same strange data started popping up everywhere. Philadelphia, Chicago, St. Louis, the pattern held. And it wasn't just an American thing. The source says similar findings were cited in records from British India and even all the way over in South Australia. So yeah, this wasn't just some local weirdness. The source is saying this was a global phenomenon. Okay, so numbers in old books are one thing, but this is where the story takes a turn, a really human and frankly heartbreaking turn. The source connects these strange statistics to a real-life program that separated families, a program known as the orphan trains. And here's the kicker, the timing. The exact period when these height measurements were being logged and then suddenly stopped, from 1888 to 1894, it lines up perfectly with the busiest years of the orphan train program, which was moving hundreds of thousands of kids out of cities in the East. And this is where it gets absolutely chilling. The source claims to have found letters from parents, like this one from a Heinrich Vogel, literally begging for their kids back. And the detail that connects it all? When the researcher looked up Mr. Vogel in that 1890 census, his height was noted as 7 feet 7 inches. So, according to the source, a process starts to emerge, a 4-step process. First, you use the census to find these families. Second, the kids are taken, often under the banner of some resettlement program, even if they had parents. They were sent far away, and their placement cards apparently had this one simple, chilling instruction: monitor growth. It sounds like a systematic program of separation and tracking. Okay, so if a government is collecting all this data and separating families, you'd think there'd be a mountain of paperwork, right? A paper trail? Well, according to the source, what was found instead was a trail of destroyed documents and flat-out denial. This timeline just lays out the whole alleged cover-up. It starts with an official memo to actually conduct the survey. Then, just 2 years later, a confidential order says stop, immediately. Then the biggest piece of evidence, the 1890 census itself, goes up in flames. Key scientific papers go missing. And even today, requests for related documents are denied for reasons that don't make a lot of sense.
And this is the official line they gave at the time.
When a scientist from the Smithsonian asked about all this data, the government's response was basically, oh, those were just errors, a mistake, case closed. But, the source argues, how can it be an error when there was an earlier memo specifically authorizing it as a study?
And the list of missing evidence just keeps growing. The scientists' letters, gone. Those key city directories with the data, vanished. State records, shipped off to who knows where. Records that were confirmed to exist just a few years ago are now supposedly gone. I mean, come on. The source argues this is just way too much of a coincidence.
All right, so paper can burn, files can disappear, but what about stuff that's much harder to get rid of? Like the buildings themselves, or photographs from the era. The source claims the physical evidence is still out there. Now, this part of the theory is just fascinating to me. The source says that researchers went and measured interior doorways in homes built in Pittsburgh during that exact time period. A standard door today is 6'8". The average in those old buildings, a towering 8'7". We're talking bedroom doors, kitchen doors, all built for someone much, much taller. And it doesn't stop with buildings. The alleged cover-up supposedly goes right into the photos from the time. The claim is, if you look at high-res scans of old photographs, you can actually see where they've been doctored, where the ground has literally been painted higher to change the scale and make the people in the pictures look shorter than they really were.
So, what does this all add up to in the end? Well, based on the bits and pieces of records that are left, the source estimates nearly 1.8 million of these individuals were documented in the US alone. And when you factor in the findings from places like British India and Australia, the total global estimate climbs to over 2 million people.
So let's just boil it all down. The core claim we've been looking at today is this. A massive, distinct population of people, over 2 million strong, was identified, measured, and then systematically, deliberately scrubbed from the official history of the late 19th century.
Look, the case that's being made here, it's built on these little fragments, right? A weird note in a census, a heartbreaking letter from a father, a doorway that's way too tall, a photo that looks a little off. No single piece proves anything, but the source argues that when you put them all together, they point to a history that someone tried very hard to hide.
And that leaves us with this one final, really haunting question from the researchers. If the goal was a total, perfect erasure, then why leave any clues behind at all? Why leave the weirdly tall doorways, the misfiled reports, the faint brushstrokes on a photograph? It's a question that makes you think that maybe, just maybe, the story of this impossible disappearance isn't quite over yet.